Hey, man, it's a good week, though, anyways, right, because we got football back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. After the off week, I'm pretty excited to cover this Bedlam. I think it should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you as well. Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining me here, Afternoon Sports Drive. And, Frank, I think really, right, this is basically a do or die for two teams that have a shot at the Big 12 title game.
Yeah. And I think, going into the season, I don't think anybody expected them to lose to an average Texas team the way they did, but I think we all knew that, like, the Bedlam was going to be big for OSU and their title hopes, and their national championship implications. They still have a shot at that, but you've got to win Bedlam if you want to do what you're trying to do. So we'll see how it goes.
I thought personally for OU, really thought that their season depended on what they did against Texas in the Red River rivalry. Do you think that was, at that point, sort of a do-or-die situation for them, too, to even, find themselves, when Bedlam came around, to still be in contention?
Yeah, because if you lose that Texas game, the window is very narrow, and I don't think it's possible. They've basically been in do-or-dies, since that point, right? And so
right.
They made it past Texas, and so now they're trying to make it past Oklahoma State. But that Texas win, I think, really, like you said, put some life back into that OU team in terms of still realizing that they have a shot at this thing.
Well, and this isn't the same OU team that we saw start off the season, and in such a rough way for them. It's just not the same team. A lot of things have improved. They've got some players back, some big-time players. Is it possible that Oklahoma State is kind of catching them at the wrong time because they are on such a roll?
Yeah, not only that, I think it's kind of a perfect storm of danger for Oklahoma State, because you're catching OU at the wrong time on them trending upward in how they're performing and how they're playing, and then it's also not a great time for you because OSU has some injury issues. The offense still isn't, quite going how it should be. And so this is a game where if you're not careful, you could get caught on the wrong side of this thing.
Yeah, it is a perfect storm is a good way to put it. Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. And when you look at Spencer Rattler with Oklahoma, I remember going back and looking at that Kansas State game early on in the season. And towards the end of it, he made that last interception, that throw, and that was not a good throw. It was a young mistake, and it looked like to a lot of people at that time that the promise and the potential was there, but he just wasn't quite ready for the big stage that Oklahoma provides. But at this point in the season, is it fair to say that he's also progressed quite a bit since then?
Yeah, he has, and I guess talking about Spencer Rattler is a similar conversation that we have with Sanders in terms of Rattler being young, and every game is another experience notch under his belt, and you can see Rattler growing as the season moved on, and so the caveat of that is we talk about Spencer Sanders being so young, but you're going against a quarterback who has less experience than you, so you've got to show up.
Yeah, it is a good comparison. They do have a lot of those things in common that we talked about a bunch this year. And as far as I talked about a minute ago, some of the players are coming back now for Oklahoma, and off suspension and all that came back a game or two ago. And the OSU defense, I think, now has to prepare a little differently, obviously, with Ramondre Stevenson coming back. That dude, we know he kind of changes the defensive game plan up.
Yeah, but I think if you're OSU, looking at what this defense has done, I think you feel like you can handle it. Obviously, he makes your life a little bit more difficult having him back on the field, but if you're OSU, you just fall back on what you've been able to do, for this entire season up until this point, no matter who's on the field, and then, you do all your assignments, you should be in pretty good shape. Now, I don't think they're going to hold them to, less than 20 points, like that's what their average is right now, the OSU defense. But, you you try to manage this OU offense as much as possible and hope your offense can give you a couple of breaks.
Well, and the defense also hasn't given up 300 yards passing this season, to a quarterback. So with that being the case, does that change in your mind on Saturday, or do they keep Rattler under 300 yards passing?
I think they can keep him under 300, but it won't be by much. I mean, I could see Rattler throwing for, 260, maybe 270, but I think they keep him under 300, but only by, a handful of yards, 20, 40 yards.
Yeah, that's fair. Frank Bonner joining us from the Tulsa World on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So for the OSU offense, assuming that Tylen is back, which I believe he will be, do you expect, for instance, we saw with Kansas State, we saw Spencer Sanders seem just a little bit hesitant on throws and was second-guessing himself because his safety blanket wasn't out there. But with Tylen hopefully back, and let's say he is, do you expect the hesitancy that we saw from him last time to go away?
I do, because he has no choice, right? And if you're the coaching staff, you probably, had these conversations or so on, but you have to let it rip when your receiver's open, whether it's Tylen Wallace or Dylan Stoner or whoever, because you're going to put your defense on its heels. And so you have no choice but to get the ball out of your hands, especially when you've got an offensive line who's had troubles. And if I'm OU, I'm going to make Spencer Sanders beat us with somebody other than Tylen Wallace. So if you're Sanders, I know Tylen Wallace is his safety blanket, but you've got to look elsewhere because I think OU is going to make him look elsewhere. I mean, Tylen Wallace is the most dangerous person on the field right now for OSU offense. And, if we know that, obviously, Lincoln Riley and the OU know that. So I think Sanders can't get in a rut of only looking for his safety blanket.
No, I think it's a great point, and it's something I've harped on as well all season long, is to find other guys. And, we kind of had to see that forced a little bit with Kansas State, but sure could be the case here against Oklahoma. And you mentioned there talking about Spencer. I brought up some critique yesterday of one thing I really want to see him improve on, which I think will help him kind of take that next step as a quarterback, is his pocket presence. And I wanted to get your opinion on that because at times we know he holds the ball too long. There's been critique before that he leaves the pocket too early. But do you think that, or I guess would you agree maybe, that if he increases that a little bit, the awareness in the pocket, knowing when to tuck and run or knowing when to get the ball out of there, that could kind of be where he needs to take that next step to produce as a quarterback?
Yeah, I think so. And that will solve a lot of his problems, from the turnovers to, obviously the sacks that he takes, putting the ball on the ground. I mean, if you can get a grapple on that, not only does it help you as a quarterback, but it helps your struggling offensive line. I mean, he doesn't have the best offensive line right now.
Right.
So if he can get the ball out of his hands quicker or know when to throw the ball away. I mean, sometimes just simply throwing a ball away can be a winning play for you versus, trying to force something. If he can understand that will get the entire offense rolling because it takes pressure off of his offensive line.
Well, and I mean, I know for young quarterbacks, if we are in a situation where you just throw the ball away, right, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good on the stat sheet at the end of the day. Oh, he threw it out of bounds, all this. But it may be something as simple as that, where you start living to see another down, and the next thing you know, those start adding up. The decision-making gets a little sharper, and that means more victories on the board, I would think. Yeah.
I guess that's the goal when trying to get through a young quarterback, especially a young quarterback who's as talented as he is, who, rightfully so feels like he can make a play on any down and wants to do that. Sometimes the play to make is just to live for another down.
Right, yeah, exactly. Frank Bonner joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. So Gundy admitted yesterday that basically they limped into that Kansas State game, and I think that was a good way to put it. Everybody was banged up for the most part, it seemed. All the big-time skill position players. We know Tylen didn't play. Chuba barely did, and LD was out there on a leg and a half. And I said yesterday that Oklahoma State can't beat Oklahoma without Tylan Wallace. I mean, if he weren't there, I don't think they could win that game. But would you agree that at least the big three for Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Tylan Wallace, need to be close to fully healthy to win this ball game?
Yeah, I think so. And, I think L.D. Brown also needs to be able to be in that mix too. Because let's say Chuba Hubbard's 80% or 75%. I think that will be enough if he can rely on L.D. Brown to pick up some of the carries for him. But I do think that it's pivotal for Tylan Wallace to be on that field and be healthy. But I will say this though, one thing the Kansas State game did do, forcing them to play without Wallace, is it showed that you can rely on Dylan Stoner to make some plays. Like, you don't always have to go to Wallace if he's being covered. Sometimes, use Wallace as a decoy and pick up, 8 or 9 yards with, Dylan Stoner. I do think that, Dylan Stoner can be a reliable receiver that you can count on if Wallace is being covered, and he showed that when Wallace was out, and he showed it last year when Wallace was out, how big he stepped up. And so I don't think we can forget how useful a Dylan Stoner can be in this Bedlam matchup.
Yeah, that was a good point. He did. He was there for Spencer Sanders when he needed it, and he kind of took on the role of being the safety blanket at times. So, and yeah, it was a good opportunity for him to show he can still do it if he gets the chance, and that he just needs the chance. So I clearly agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, he's kind of, I feel like this season, if you were to ask Dylan Stoner to be completely honest about what his role has been this season at a receiver spot, he might be, telling you, look, I wish I had a few more looks my way. I wish I had a few more opportunities because I think I can make big plays. And he might just be the guy. And you bring up a good point too, Frank. We talk about Tylan demands so much attention defensively that it allows openings like that. And what we saw against Kansas State was Dylan Stoner did a really good job of playing in the slot at times, finding those holes in the zone and sitting down in them. But I think you're right? He could make some big plays when you need them. Yeah,
and I think for OSU, it's important that you try to limit your 3 and outs, right? And Dylan Stoner can be your biggest asset in that. Getting you, a 6-yard catch, a 7-yard catch, which can set up a manageable, 3rd and 3 or so on. What you don't want to do if you're OSU is to find yourself in 3rd and longs, and then OU knowing that the person you're looking for is going to be Tylan Wallace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree.
Dylan Stoner can keep you ahead of the chains.
Yeah, he very well can. He's done that before plenty of times. Has the ability. Has got to look his way. That's Frank Bonner joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. So we talked about Chuba. If he comes in healthy in this game, obviously last time out he was hindered with the injury and couldn't do much. But if he comes in healthy in this one, do you see this as a possible bounce-back game for him?
Yeah, and it would be a huge bounce-back game. I mean, if Chuba, and he's very well capable of doing that, assuming he's healthy, like you said. If he can come back and, rush for, 120 yards or so, average, 5 yards a carry. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, how many times did we see him do that last year? And he showed spurts of obviously this year. So, that could be your key. A healthy Chuba Hubbard in a primetime game, showing that, he's still one of the best running backs in the league.
And even if he does come back and he's fully healthy, with what LD did against Kansas State and what he's done this season, has he proven again that he maybe deserves some more touches, even regardless of Chuba's health?
Yeah, I think. I mean, because, when you've had to rely on him, because, K-State, Chuba was out, what he did earlier this year, he's come through. And so you want to reward him by, getting him some more touches, and he delivers for you. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see him more in the passing game, giving some screens and so on, because we talk about how quick Chuba Hubbard is. But LD Brown has got some wheels too. So you can help. He can help Spencer Sanders out by being a dump off in the passing game and picking up some yards after the catch. So I think you've got a number of ways of you can get him some touches.
Yeah, he really does have that sneaky speed. I've noticed that too this year. So overall, in this ball game, do you see this as more of a low-scoring affair, or will there be a lot of points put up in this like there have been in the past in Bedlam?
I think it's going to be in the 30s, the mid to low 30s. If it gets over 35, 35 over 40 points, I don't know if this offense can keep up with a high scoring 45-point game or so on. I think in this defense, right, OSU has a really solid defense, and I think they can keep Oklahoma to around 30, 35 points.
Okay. So with that being said, what kind of prediction can you give me here? You don't have to give me a score if you don't want to, but where are you leaning right now on this Tuesday before Bedlam?
Right now, man. So right now, with me not knowing, as if OSU is fully healthy right now on this Tuesday, I think I'm leaning more towards Oklahoma in a 32-27 type of game. I think Oklahoma's going to kick a lot of field goals because the defense, may be able to keep them out of the end zone, but I think they're going to have some red zone attempts where they kick a lot of field goals, but it'll still be enough to put up 32 points and beat Oklahoma State 32-27.
Okay, there you go. You heard it here first, Frank. I see. Here's the thing. I'm with you. If we knew fully where the health was on this team, I think I would be leaning. I'd be more confident leaning towards Oklahoma State too at this moment. But man, it's we know what happens. We got to see it when they're not healthy a couple of weeks ago, and they scratched one out thanks to their defense. So let me switch it around here. Last question for you to basketball real quick, because we saw yesterday like the NCAA is going to move the entire NCAA tournament to one location where it's essentially a bubble. You think that's the right move?
Yeah, I think so. Assuming that it's feasible to do that, and I think they think it is, but I think it's the right move just because the NCAA tournament is so crazy. Because I read a story some years ago about like plane flights and how like chaotic it is. If a team wins or loses, they got to hop on this plane and travel. And so with the virus still being a major issue, limiting all those plane flights and everything, I think it's best for the athletes that are involved.
I said that yesterday that I am in favor because I think it maybe gives you the best chance to not have any type of interruption, and I want to see a full NCAA tournament, right, with no interruptions or cancellations after it being stripped away from us last year. As just a college basketball fan, I don't want to see any interruptions to this NCAA tournament.
And I think that probably played a major role, right? I mean, you look at this, like this college football season, for instance. There have been some postponements and some cancellations, and then you look at the NBA bubble. They were able to have their season nonstop. There's no such thing as a postponement or a cancellation during the tournament. So, like, you've got to, prevent that from happening, and this is the best way to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Frank. I appreciate it as always, man. And hopefully, next week we're talking and we have a bedlam win for Oklahoma State to talk about. But until then, man, have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
You too.